It's our Trans-Tasman live pod for listeners that missed out. Firstly, an Opals update courtesy of Coach Sandy Brondello. The Opals are going to have a camp just prior to the Throwdown series at the South Australian Basketball Centre and South Australian Institute of Sport. They'll also have a community super camp for kids alongside the Boomers and Opals, which sounds amazing. We can now confirm the series head coaches Paul Gorris alongside assistants Shannon Seabohm and Christy Harrower. Good luck to this amazing coaching lineup. In addition, the coaches will invite a small group of local coaches as part of the Opals training to help develop local coaching talent. Good luck to the Opals and Tall Ferns and the coaching staff. Let the Trans-Tasman Throwdown series begin. So, for everyone listening to us live, welcome to this special live edition of Shooting the Breeze, where we'll be talking about the upcoming Trans-Tasman Throwdown series between Australia and New Zealand. Joining me today, we have our New Zealand experts, Linden and Maia Williamson, and from Australia, joining us again, it's Kerry Waller. And I just want to say, one of the reasons why this is such a special podcast is this is episode 200.
Wow.
And this episode, actually, it's a really great example of what we've always wanted the show to be. It's a platform to talk about and celebrate women's basketball and women in basketball, not only here in Australia, but also overseas, and also to work with people like yourselves who really believe in women's hoops. So it's great to have you here on episode 200, guys.
It's great to be here.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks so much for having us.
Great. So before we get into the Trans-Tasman stuff, and there's a lot there to get into, just want to sort of go around the table for a second. Now, Maia, there's been some really big things happening for you now. What's been going on?
Yeah, I just recently moved up to the Big Smoke here in New Zealand, Auckland, for my internship at MediaWorks as a part of the New Zealand Broadcasting School. It's been a really cool challenge. Auckland is definitely a very crazy place. And I have been lucky enough to become a lead commentator for the Sales NBL now for Sky Sport, which has been a big jump from last year. And just, doing the usual bits and bobs.
That's great. That's fantastic. And because I remember the first time we had you on, you were just starting to get into that whole broadcast space.
Yeah. I've definitely come a long way, I'm just commentating local stuff to somehow just tripped and fell into some pretty cool opportunities. I've been pretty fortunate, but I'm very happy to be where I am, and hopefully it's, continuing to trend upward from here.
Awesome. And Linden, you've made a pretty big shift. You are over in the old Blighty now.
Yeah, but first of all, before you go into that, I just want to say, Maia, I'm just so proud of you and everything that you've done. A lot of it's hard work though, and sure, luck comes into a little bit of it, but really you've worked hard for this, and it's just so cool to watch you, and you're keeping my home very safe, and so I can't wait to come back and tear it up with you when I do go back. But yes, currently, I'm up in Newcastle upon Tyne. So, as my friend said, actually, the real Newcastle, over in England, up in the northeast, and about 3 months into a lecturer role in sport management at a university up here. It was quite a sudden move. I wasn't anticipating it, but I'm very, very grateful. It's probably the best move I could have done just for me professionally. So, very happy to be over here. But miss my homes down South Pacific very much, and very, very grateful to still be able to be part of this community and keep chatting about New Zealand, because that is what I love to do.
Awesome. And of course, Kerry, things have changed for you. You've got the first 3 eps of your podcast up.
Yeah.
And how's that going?
Yeah, the Courtside Coffee Catch-Up is going great guns. So, I've been really lucky to do 3 episodes now with 3 completely different guests and have 3 completely different chats. And it's so far going well and sort of exactly what I wanted it to be, just an authentic catch-up with people doing great things. So we started off with basketball and looking forward to sort of moving over into shining a light on some women doing some great stuff in sports, in all sports in South Australia soon. So
Fantastic. Okay, so let's roll into what we're going to be talking about, which is the upcoming Trans-Tasman Throwdown series between Australia and New Zealand, and it's not that far away. We're talking about May the 7th is the first game in Adelaide, and I think the first thing that all of us can agree on is these are two very young teams that are going to be taking the floor. I want to throw across to you, Maia, because I think so far it's 10 or 11 of the squad have been announced. There's still a couple more to come. And what I'm seeing here is a lot of names that I don't think have been on the floor for the Tall Ferns before.
Yeah, you're definitely right. There is a lot of debutantes, and that may be as a result of just general availability for a lot of our experienced athletes. There's a lot of young debutantes that are just finishing up their college careers or are still in high school or just finished high school, which is a lot when you're taking on the Opals, who are second ranked in the world. But similarly, they're a very young roster as well. So it's cool. It's giving these girls a really cool chance to showcase what they can do. It's a good chance for them to perform on a really global stage like this. And we talked about this pre-pod. It's just like a cool experience for Aotearoa basketball to have some new faces to kind of transform what the style of basketball is now. Things have changed. So, these young guns are ready to run and ready to play. And among the others, there's only spot appearances for them. I mean, we're talking McKenna Dale is probably going to be a veteran or experienced one, and she's only had 5 Tall Ferns appearances herself. And Ezra McGoldrick, I think, is going to end up being the most experienced one on the roster. And, she only carries 19 Tall Ferns appearances herself, which in the grand scheme of things is not really that many. So it's going to be, a tough run for them, but it's also, these are the faces of our future. So they have to get this development at some point.
Yeah, and one of the things that I've been interested in is, given that there's so many new players coming in, how important do you think the opportunity for the players to get together and sort of really gel is going to be as part of this series?
Yeah, that's really important. I mean, you can be as talented as you are, but if your culture and your connectivity is not there, it's actually really hard to transform those skills into a cohesive group on the court. And that's kind of the hardest thing I think about international basketball for most countries, is just the time spent together is really hard. And, the time to gel and teach your concepts and learn your team framework is very difficult. But I think these girls are ready to perform in a really professional standard where they will get to know each other quickly and kind of do what they have to do in order to perform as a cohesive. And I think the great thing about New Zealand basketball as well, it's a small enough country where everyone probably knows each other already. And a few of these guys will have played against each other and with each other over the last few years. So it's not going to be completely fresh faces, but you're right, it's going to take a little while. There might be some teething processes, I think, in the first couple of games where they, really try to find their feet.
Yeah, I think, and like Maia said, because we're in a small country, it's a thing where, we're able to, there are going to be players who do know each other, like Maia said, and I think especially in this time, which I've often wondered kind of, and I love the veterans, but, wondering when that shift just naturally, because naturally there's a shift in sport when the younger generation is going to come through. And it looks like we're starting to see it now, which is exciting. And, to Maia's point, a lot of they know each other. Sometimes they've played with each other, albeit not always internationally, or sometimes internationally 3x3. But it is different than 5-on-5. And international basketball does take time. And so, it's going to be an amazing group. But I remember watching, I think Ezra, her debut was 2019, William Jones Cup in Japan. And so watching her become now one of the veterans, I mean, she's grown so much, and, her improvement, and McKenna's done very well too. So it's going to be nicely led. But I mean, I'm looking forward to seeing what Net can do with, because it's going to be a raw group, but I think there's a lot of potential. I think there's a lot of room to be excited about it.
Now, I wanted to throw to Kerry for a second, because your first guest on your podcast was Nat Hurst.
That's right.
Who we've been also lucky enough to have on Shooting the Breeze in the past as well. Did Nat manage to sort of give you any little insights into what's happening with New Zealand?
A little bit. I was lucky enough to reach out to her yesterday, just briefly, just to get an idea of what this lead up looks like, because obviously there's a lot of new faces and she's here in Australia. So my first question was, are you going to New Zealand? Are you all meeting here? What does that look like? So they are arriving in Adelaide on the 3rd, and then they'll have training camp for a couple of days and really fit as much as they can into those few days before they play that first game against the Opals. So the culture piece, I think, is really important to her, and bringing on Mel Bennett as one of the assistant coaches has been really integral in that, and it's something that she really wants to get right as a head coach coming into a New Zealand side from Australia, obviously, and she's had a lot to learn. And I think even with her transition from player to coach, she's always really open, and the same in this instance. She's put her hand up and I don't know what I don't know. I'm trying to learn as fast as I can, and I think Mel's been really integral and really important in that aspect.
And of course, we've got to start thinking about the Opals as well. Again, a very young squad. I think there's some surprising names in there as well. But I think one of the key things here is we're going to be seeing two very young teams going together, as I said. And I'm curious as to who you think, Kerry, was going to be potentially impact players from the younger side of the squad in the Opals.
Yeah, there's a few, to be honest. And I think the exciting thing about the Opal squad is not so much, I guess, the debutants actually aren't as young as you would expect. They're actually quite, the players like Courtney Woods and Mila Sowa, who are debuting for the Opals, they've got a lot of experience under their belt. So I think that's quite exciting. And obviously the comeback of Sarah, I think that her comeback story, her leadership, I think that's really exciting as well as the youth. But there's a lot more experience in the Opals team, despite having 4 debutants. There's a lot more experience there than I think the younger Tall Ferns.
Yeah. Now, I know that we had Sandy Brondello on the podcast just a few weeks ago, and one of the things she said was that Sarah is in the best condition of her career at this point, which, to be honest, is going to be interesting as one of the senior members of the leadership team of the Opals. But also one of the things that Sandy did mention is that she's really interested to see how the mix of the players are going to work together. So in relation to that, because this is always a really important part of the team, I'm going to throw it over to you both, Maia and Linden. This whole ability of how they're going to play together, right? Obviously, as you said, New Zealand's a small place, everybody knows each other, but it's going to be interesting to see how these players actually gel on the floor and get their chemistry working. What do you guys think is are the players that need to be, for the fans, need to be looking out for? And also, do you guys see any particular challenges that Nat Hurst is going to have, given that they really haven't had a lot of time together?
Yeah, I think Nat it sounds as though she's prepared for it to be quite a challenge. Like you said, Kerry, like this Opals team is technically, I guess, less experienced than obviously what went to Paris, but like you said, like their debutants are full-blown WNBL players that have a serious impact in that league. And that's a very different standard to our debutants who are still in college, just finished high school. So I guess the hardest thing is going to be kind of getting those guys up to speed on the pace, the space, and the physicality of the basketball that the Opals are going to bring. And also instilling confidence, because these are young women who have not played at this level. And that's probably a very intimidating thing to come into, is playing the number 2 ranked team in the world. And then it's just that cohesive stuff as well. Like, it's Nat Hurst's debut game as like the full-time Tall Ferns head coach. She's obviously faced a bit of slack, but, not to her own fault at all. But I think Basketball New Zealand, faced a little bit of criticism hiring an Australian coach. So, there's a lot on the line for her right now. But I think, she's a great woman for the job, and she's got Mel Bennett to bring in the Kiwi side, who's been essential for, being the pillars for the cultural side of the Tall Ferns. And she's got the experience in Ezra McGoldrick, McKenna Dale, and there's been some foreshadowing. There's another Poakai player on the way. So my guess is that's Sian Rabadi, who brings a little bit of experience herself, but has has the leadership skills as well. So those guys are going to be relied on heavily, I think, by Nat Hurst to, to bring things together.
I think like Nat for sure. I think there's definitely a formula happening here. And I think after just giving it time, I think it actually can work quite nicely. Like Maya pointed out, it's a different league kind of, because you've got not very many of these women have played Tauihi either. Some of them have, but not all. They haven't been on the radar for future teams, just because a lot of them have been in college that they don't necessarily get the chance to. Somebody I do want to flag is Emmy Scherer. She has not made the Tall Ferns yet until now, and she's just leapt up in progress in college at the University of Portland. So I think that she's definitely going to be someone to keep your eye on. Tyler Hooper, I'm quite excited to see what she can do. She's been in Melbourne, and so we haven't seen much of her, but looking forward to having her in the fold. Personally, I'm quite excited about Kaylee Smiler coming off a great year with the Phi, and so I think it's going to be really fun to see her there. And so, for some reason, if Sharn is the next one to be unveiled, that's great. But I think, in my opinion, I'm a little bit biased, but I love all of them. But I think all of them in their own way are exciting, and ones to watch, even though, how do I say it? You may not know their name now, but you will. And there's a lot of potential, and this is a really good growth opportunity for them, because who knows, they might be climbing the ranks and, the next big Tauihi stars down the line. And, we really get to see the generation, the start of it now. So I think the confidence is a great point, and that takes time, and that that also comes in with a trust as a team. And so there's definitely that's a task that you can't master overnight, but hopefully, and Mel Bennett does a great job culture-wise and with coaching. So hopefully, they can, even if they just get the least bit of momentum at the very beginning, if that can carry them through, then I think that's going to be a huge win.
Yeah, I think it's a really exciting time. Like, there's just so much opportunity there, like an opportunity to, as you said, they're young, like they can start building towards something. I'm a little bit biased because I'm here in Adelaide in the NBL 1 Central. The other person I'm excited to see is Ashley Strawbridge, who's been playing here for the West Adelaide Bearcats. I think she, if given the opportunity, could make a real impact. And am I right, who you were just talking about, is she a relation of Stephen Adams, Rabadi?
Yeah, she's his niece. So
I met her at the inaugural Stephen Adams High School Invitational.
No way.
So that's why my face lit up. I was like, I've been waiting for some of these guys to get announced. I was hoping to see some of my little players. We're not so little anymore. So that's so cool.
I mean, obviously can't bank on the fact it should be announced, but I don't know who else it really could be. And she obviously was part of the team that went away to Mexico, I believe. So
the same with Ashley Strawbridge.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And they had really good seasons with the Buakai. I mean, Sharn was the most improved player in Tauihi, and deservedly so. Like, she took a massive step up, shot the ball well, finished ball well. But having been kind of involved in that circle, like, her leadership just took a massive step up. She matured a lot, and she became genuinely the leader in that squad, side by side with Michaela Cann, who is an undisputed captain. But Sharn just led that group really well, and she's fierce, great competitor. So if she does get announced, she'll definitely bring it to the Aussies. That's no doubt. And then same with Ashley Shawbridge. Like, she's just a spark plug off the bench, and she's just so athletic. And what I find really cool about her story is that she went away to college and actually stopped playing basketball altogether because she just didn't enjoy it anymore, and returned to the sport in NBL 1 thanks to Mel Downer, actually.
Yes.
And has just been electric, and then has made the Tall Ferns. So that's really, really cool for her, and it's a rewarding for her hard work and her tenacity to return to the sport. And she's such a great human too.
That's a really cool story, and this team is filled with so many great storylines. But I think Ash's is one that probably isn't chatted about enough, to be honest.
So before we actually get to kind of step back to the Opals for a second, you all mentioned or suggested something, and that's all about New Zealand basketball, Nat Hurst being announced as the coach. It's obviously a big shift for New Zealand basketball. I'm kind of curious to understand what were the kind of issues or what were the kind of comments that were coming back from the New Zealand basketball community. Because at some point, you got to realise that you've got to get coaching staff who are going to bring the skills that you need to elevate your team.
Mm.
Right? So at some point, you've got to start looking wider afield. So I'm kind of curious because to me it seems like, if you want to bring the level of your country, your national team up, you want to look for the best possible coach you can have on the bench, regardless of where they're from.
Yeah, 1000%. Like, I think people in New Zealand, like, it's obviously favourable to have someone successful from, your own country. Like, Judd Flavell is a perfect example for the Tall Blacks. He's, built his way through the ranks in New Zealand and was undoubtedly the choice for the Tall Blacks. But I just don't think, unfortunately, we didn't have a choice like that for the women's. And there was a couple of candidates that maybe people assumed would just kind of take that step up into the role. But that's not how things work out, and that's not how the Basketball New Zealand panel decided it was going to be. And I know there was a personal connection after listening to your fantastic podcast, Kerry. There was a connection between Guy and Nat. And obviously, if your current coach is advocating for someone and this person is keen, I feel like that's a pretty sure decision. And obviously, Nat was so great over her interim period that she's been hired. And I think you just can't really argue with that kind of success. And she's a very successful ex-player. What happened in Adelaide was just really unfortunate, but she is fantastic nonetheless. And I don't think there's anything you can argue with that, but I think people in New Zealand are just not happy that there's an Australian coach. Maybe that's because the little rivalry we got going on, like, we don't love our neighbours across the ditch, I guess, but I just think people aren't really, thinking about, this is like what's beneficial for a country. It's more so like, oh, they're not a Kiwi, so screw you kind of thing, which is, there's been a lot in the Facebook from anonymous commenters, which obviously means nothing in the grand scheme of things, but they're very passionate.
Which is great to see, and it's heartening to see that there is a group of folks in New Zealand who care so much about basketball and that they care enough to even comment on something like this. But at the same time, it's like, again, like, it's tough. There are coaches in New Zealand who probably could have been fit for the role, and they're, you may assume that would be a natural fit to step in, but as Maia said, that's not how it works. And in Basketball New Zealand had a direction when they chose the coaches, and that's perfectly valid too. And I think Nat's going to do a great job. And it was, criticism is unfair. I think it was just a tough time and tough place for her to come into, but she's going to be great. And again, Kerry, great pod with her, and love what you're doing with that, because I think if everyone took the time to listen to that, they'd have so much more context. And it would be, I think, and just be like, what, like, let's embrace it, because that's going to bring some great stuff. And and you don't know what you don't know, and change can be scary, and because you haven't gone through it before, but that also equals opportunity.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest word that keeps coming to mind, is there's just so much opportunity. And when you mention some of those players, obviously you guys know them a lot better than I do, but if she can get the buy-in from this young group of players, and I think there's still a couple more that aren't available at the moment that I've been lucky enough to get to know, who I know have great morals and values and could bring so much to this squad as well. If they can go into it with, this is a new team, this is a new chapter, where you bring the cultures and the values with it, but it's our opportunity to reshape them and make us a successful team. I think it's a really great time for that to happen, and I think Nat is a really good person to lead that. I guess I have the insight as well that I was an Australian who came to New Zealand in a basketball role, and it was really bloody hard. And so Nat and I, apart from the pod that you guys have all heard, we haven't actually had a chance to unpack that. So it was really interesting for me as well, post-pod, to hear from New Zealand people that there had been these conversations going on. And they happen everywhere. Like, this, they happen everywhere. But I just hope that the Tall Ferns squad and the players can buy in, because the other thing that we've touched on, Paul, is they're making history. They are the first national team to have an all-female coaching staff. And then Nat was kicking herself after the pod, because then she realised that not only are her coaches female, her physio and her team manager are also female.
Wow.
Like, so we obviously don't know the whole world, but we're pretty confident that it's one of the only teams in the world on the FIBA stage that have an all-female staff. So again, like, what an amazing opportunity to lead from the front and create a whole new story for the Tall Ferns.
Yeah, 100%. I feel like that's not been celebrated enough. As amazing as Guy was, and he left the program in a really good place. He passed the duties on to a woman and made sure that his intention was that it was passed on to a woman. And like, the flow-on effect that we now have 2 female assistant coaches is like, that should be the celebration. It just doesn't matter where Nat's from. She brings a plethora of experience, and she's a woman that wants to, include New Zealand culture, and has, obviously clearly made a emphasis on bringing, women that coach women. And if they can have successful on an international stage in that way, that's like a massive win for our country.
Yeah, it's the best of everything, and I'm super excited about it. I think, and everyone else should be too. And I think Nat, again, I think we're all ready. Hopefully, if Nat hears this, then she'll come out extra confident, because we're all singing her praises. I mean, and I think she's gonna be the perfect person to lead it. And this chapter, and Guy's chapter with the Tall Ferns was no doubt meaningful. And like Maia said, he left it in a great spot. And I think he deliberately did that. He's just that kind of person who will leave something better than when he found it. And thinking about the progression that they've had in the past couple of years since he's joined them is astronomical. And he's had some great assistants alongside him. And the team really made it work. But it's time. And I think this is a huge era that's about to commence.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the key things about this series as well. What we're talking about is these 2 teams are building teams. They're teams that are foundational for what's going to happen in the future. Sandy Brondello has said, we start our Olympic campaign literally the day after the Olympics are over. It's a 4-year cycle. You've got this team that's been built up in New Zealand now that's, it's going to take time. And I think people need to understand, you're not just going to get results immediately, but what you're looking for is those incremental improvements. And that's, Sandy Brondello had a lot of criticism at some points in her tenure, early in her tenure as the Opals coach. You had a lot of people who were making comments about her choices of the squad, etc. And now that's gone by the by after. But it's taken time to get the results that were necessary to get everybody to sort of just settle down and get on board with the fact that things don't turn around quickly. And I think that's part of what she's really sort of managed to do with the squad that she's putting together for the Trans-Tasman Throwdown. I mean, some of the names that are in the squad are really interesting. I think one of the ones that's going to be really interesting to look at is Milisoa, because of that dynamic style of play that she's developed, particularly from the 3x3. And I think that's going to really make a bit of a difference to the way the Opals approach this series. I mean, look, we were all watching the 3x3 up in Asia for the Asia Cup. What do you guys think that sort of experience is going to help bring to the team, and what sort of things is that going to do for, what sort of challenges is that going to be able to throw out on the floor for New Zealand?
Yeah, I think, to be honest, I think it actually is an advantage for this young New Zealand team. We're really getting into this era of positionless basketball. So, they do have to be quick and all the things that you need to be a successful 3-on-3 player. I'm interested to hear what Maia and Linden feel, but yeah, I guess for me, I'm long retired. I never use that word, but I'm clearly retired. And even just the change change from the 30-second shot clock to the 24-second shot clock was a massive thing for me. I was never explosive or fast like I was a traditional big. There's no traditional bigs anymore. Like, it really is moving towards positionless. You've still got your positions, but most of these girls, like, they're really pushing the stretch, the long guards with the long arms and all that sort of stuff. And the pace of the game has increased so much that I actually see that as an advantage for the Tall Ferns coming up against this Opal side.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think both sides have, 4-5s that are, that can attack from the wing, that can pick and pop. And that changes strategy completely. But yeah, I think it's been a massive emphasis, I think, not only on the international stage, but in WNBL and To'ihi and the clubs within New Zealand and the NBL 1/club scene in Australia as well. And you can tell by the way, both of these sides play. To'ihi picked up in the pace and the physicality this year. And obviously watching WNBL and NBL 1, like players like Poach, like she's a freakishly long athlete. And, back in the day, maybe a player like her would have been back to the basket, but she sprints the lanes, she penetrates, and even their bigs, like, is it Sheriff, like Froling, all the rest, they are pick and pop, they're dynamic, and I think that's probably the reason as to why there's emphasis on maybe some younger squads here is, it's pushing that pace and space style of play that both New Zealand and Australia are very synonymous with.
And I think one of the interesting things you mentioned, like you mentioned Nadia Poch, is the fact that a lot of these players now that are going to be in this squad have also, well, for some of them, they've actually been out there doing some getting international experience, like Lauren Scherf, Steph Reed. They're getting that different approach to their game that they're picking up in Europe, and they're going to be bringing that into the mix as well. I think that's going to create some really interesting mixes and some interesting challenges for New Zealand, only because the squad hasn't gotten to the point where they've had the ability to get that experience, that sort of experience overseas, to be able to, no matter how much you watch, it's not the same as being on the floor and getting that experience, in a game. I think that's going to actually provide a number of challenges with these players because, they've been knocking up some really good numbers over in Europe, putting in some great performances. I think that's going to also provide a bit of a challenge for New Zealand, only from the perspective that it's something different.
Yeah, I agree. Like the Euro Cup thing with Stephanie Reid is really impressive. Like, that's some of the best basketball in the world, and she'll be coming up against some really elite athletes, and she's averaging, I think, 11 points a game and almost 7 assists as well. So to be performing in one of the best leagues in the world against, some of the most talented in the world is a problem for New Zealand, I will admit it. But I think the biggest thing as well is, like we've talked about it a million times, but it just brings a level of experience that, I think our New Zealand guards don't have. Like, our guards are currently like Tyler Hooper, Palas Hokianga, Smiler, like that, they're all extremely talented, but just haven't had that experience to play against the physicality and the decision making and pace that, is played in top league in Australia and Europe as well. So yeah, it's going to be hard for the Tall Ferns, but nonetheless, again, if we want to develop our future, this is exactly what has to be done.
Yeah, it's one of those situations where sometimes, and look, it's a terrible way to put it, but sometimes you've got to take a step back. You've got to lose some games to be able to identify the areas where you need to strengthen yourselves to be able to then take that next step forward. And I think that's one of the areas where this series is going to actually long-term be good for New Zealand. One of the other players, and I'm really curious to hear what your opinions are on this, that's going to create a lot of issues for New Zealand, I think, is going to be Maddie Roche. Particularly the last couple of seasons in the WNBL, she's really stepped up and she's become, a real disruptor. She's become more aggressive in the ways that she needles and she harasses players when they're bringing the ball down the court. What sort of impact do you think she's going to have in challenging New Zealand?
Yeah, she's going to be tough. I guess that's the interesting thing about a series like this is it's not a qualification series. It is what is the word I'm looking for here, Paul?
Well, we could call it a friendly series, but given what you guys have done to us with
Exhibition, that's the one.
okay, all right, we'll go with exhibition. I'm just going to say, given what you guys have done to us with the Bledisloe Cup over the last few years, it's
Revenge. It's a revenge tour.
So, yeah. So what I was gonna say was that I guess it will be interesting to see the way that it's played out, because you're absolutely right. Someone like Maddie Rocci with over 150 games WNBL experience and like you said, a disruptor, and so the Opals could get up and in, and they could absolutely destroy these young players if they wanted to. But is that what the idea of the series is? My understanding is that it's more also for the Opals to set themselves up, get themselves gelling ahead of this Asia Cup in July. And it'll be the first time that the Opals are together. So yeah, I mean, Maddie Rocci, there's other, there's a Izzy Borlays.
Yep.
These players could come in and have a 50-point game, maybe. But is that the way that it's going to be played? Is that what Sandy would like to see? Or is it going to be more of a giving everyone a go, trying some new combinations? Yeah, it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, I kind of tend to agree with you on that. I'm wondering if it's going to end up being one of those series where you start seeing a lot of different rotations being tried out. Let's experiment with this mix, let's experiment with that mix, which will mean that you're going to get runs in the game where it's not necessarily going to go the way people expect, purely because there's going to be a lot of experimentation going on. And look, the other side to this is, people have an expectation that New Zealand's not going to be a strong challenge, only because, as you've said rightly, Maia and Linden, there's so many young players who don't have the experience at that level, that WNBL level. But that being said, never count out people who really are coming in with, hey, we got nothing to lose, let's give it everything.
Yeah, 100%. I think Linden can speak to this as well, because she's spent a lot of time getting to know a lot of these girls. These are some very high character individuals, and I know for a fact I don't think Nat would pick anyone that's outside of that bracket. And like, for example, Ella Bradley, Emmy Shearer, Whita Jennings, they've all played at a collegiate level, and that is not for the weak. Like, playing D1 basketball in America, living away from your family, gruesome training, that is not for the weak. So these girls are definitely ready, and like you said, there's nothing to lose for them, so why not throw everything at the wall? And if they do come out of the series 0-3, 3-0, 2-1, 1-2, doesn't matter. Like, it's a development phase for them, and there's like, if you're a debutant and you can take it to these experienced Opals, I don't know why you wouldn't. And I think, Lyndon, you probably have a lot to say on that too.
Yeah, it's one of those things. I think they're gonna go in, and you're right, they are extremely high character individuals. I've interacted with most of them, not all of them, but I've heard, even the ones I haven't interacted with per se, I've heard great things about. There's a lot to it, and I think there's something to be said for the mentality of, and also, you're right, we don't know what's going to happen on the day, and we don't know what Sandy's going to do. And I think because of the way things have played out in previous international tournaments, might be easy to jump to the conclusion of, Adelaide, this is probably not going to go our way. But again, we don't know that. And these girls, there's none to lose, and they're not going to go in thinking, we're going to come out, on the L side. They're not thinking that. They're tough. And, Wyatt Jennings, she was at Baylor, and now going to Alabama. I mean, those are some big schools. And so, not to mention there's other experience as well coming in. So who have had opportunities for big moments. And no doubt that, these big moments, they'll amount to something. And having heard what Nat has to say, I think that, there's a method to the madness here. There's just so much I think that they can take away from it. That's not on the scoreline. But yeah, they're extremely wonderful people, and they take great pride in representing their country. And even though it's, we classify this as an exhibition series, it doesn't mean they're going to take it any less seriously, and that they're still representing Aotearoa and who they are and their whānau and their friends, and they're going to step up to the plate.
I love that. Paul, I'm just going to say one word. Nigeria.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Fact.
We,
Come. Come.
we try to
Like-
we try to forget that one.
We do, but I think again, opportunity is the word for me. And the Opals have shown that they're human. Like Lauren Jackson was playing. Like, you know, everyone has a bad day. I think that's just the epitome of things not going to plan, right? So I think they'll be fine. And like you said, players that they might not be experienced, but they've played in big moments, and great players step up in big moments.
Yeah, what I like about that is I was listening to that pod you guys did with Sandy, and she just spoke about, like, while that was extremely unexpected on their behalf and not good enough, I'm pretty sure she used that wording, like,
Yeah.
that she said that was a test of their ability to bounce back and be resilient, and that's where your true character shines. So, you know, if they can learn how to do that in an Olympic series and still end up with a bronze medal, then this Trans-Tasman exhibition series is like the perfect place to learn that, especially for some of these young girls who, you know, it's probably going to be a little bit of a slap in the face, but, you know, that's what they need and what they will want, I think, if they're wanting longevity in their basketball careers.
Yeah, I think another key part to this is that never underestimate the challenge of Australia versus New Zealand. It doesn't matter what sport it is, right? It's just one of those great rivalries. You know, cricket, football. We don't really talk about the rugby too much.
No, let's talk about that.
But I think also, you know, we've also got, you know, some of the players that are coming into the Opals for this, they're not playing for, you know, China. They're playing, you know, to try and stake a position for the next Olympics. You know, someone like Abby Ellis, who's coming in, you know, like there would be people who would have expected to see other players in the roster, even though she was, you know, the breakout player of the WNBL season. But you kind of, again, you know, referring back to that podcast with Sandy, you can see she's got this vision of, you know, not just the next Olympics, but the ones after that as well. She's trying to build up a roster like that creates a pipeline for the Opals for the next two Olympic cycles. And, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if what Nat Hurst is going to be doing is to be looking at how do we create a pipeline for New Zealand? You know, understanding that, yeah, at the early part of the pipeline, it's going to be tough. But then as time goes on and there's more experience, and particularly where players, like with a lot of the players in Australia, where they get noticed by teams overseas on their performances on the international stage, they'll go, hey, we'd like to try and recruit you for Europe. We'd like to try and recruit you, you know, get you in on a training contract for the WNBA to give them that additional experience. Based off of that, I think there's a lot of potential for this to take place. And this series has got the potential to be the start of those sorts of potential international steps for a lot of these players.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, you go, Kerry. You go.
Yeah, I was just going to say, you guys can speak more on this, but I think the introduction of the TUI League as well, like, has closed that gap. I'll let you talk on that.
No, you're exactly right, though.
Yeah.
You go, Lynn.
Go ahead, Maia.
Oh, okay. Well, what I was going to say is exactly right. The TUI League has, you know, from its inaugural year a few years ago to now, just like taken massive steps up. I mean, the Queen's got the attraction of Jordan Houston, who is a bona fide WNBA player. Like, she's a genuine impact player in the WNBA. To have someone like that come out to Aotearoa, you know, that speaks volumes, I think, about what it's doing across the world. And you're right, a lot of these girls are getting a lot of development from that. And the Rapid League also, you know, able to improve these girls. I mean, Kiriana Havilite is a great example. She grew up in Australia, but as a Kiwi, played in Mel Bennett's under-17 team all the way through, had a season with the Queens, and now is, you know, making her debut in the Tall Ferns. I think that's a perfect example. And, you know, there's probably names like her Tyler Hooper's probably wanting to, have a crack at WNBL or some other leagues around the world. And the girls who are finishing their college careers, like Emmy Shearer, Ella Bradley, possibly Kaylee Smiler as well, are probably, hoping to be looked at by other people. And you're right, Paul, this is a great way for them to do it. And obviously, we are missing the likes of probably a lot of players that you've heard about, Penina Davidson, obviously Crystal Ledger-Walker, Charlize Ledger-Walker, Ella Fortu, Tali Tabea. Like, there's just so many names in there that obviously aren't included in the squad. I don't know for what reason, but yeah, you're right. It's a great chance for these girls to actually be seen on an international level and show recruiters, scouts, and coaches what they're made of.
I think talked about the pipeline for so many years and trying to identifying where is that, and think this is probably that huge moment of, are we starting to see, but there's always been talent along the line. It's just kind of, where is it, and do the right people know about it, and is there that awareness? Because New Zealand's always had good players. It's just, where are they, and are they receiving the awareness and promotion that they deserve? And I think now we're finally at the place where, is there kind of a cohesive line down the road that we can start saying? Because I carried on an amazing story. And really, as I spoke to her at when the Queens were over in China for a tournament back in October now, and just how poised she was, and this is before Tauhi had even tipped. And so, just being in amongst the madness of it all, and then, and just, Maia said, great case study with the Rapid League, and has really grown into her own. And Tauhi, it provides a really good opportunity. And I wouldn't be surprised if there's going to be, more, maybe some of these girls do either come back to Tauhi or sign for a season very soon, because, it did get a lot of international traction, which is great. And so I think it's great that there is that league available, but nothing can beat being on the international stage and having that experience as well. So I think this is just an enhancer for New Zealand basketball.
Yeah, there's a risk of poking the New Zealand public, but Justin Nelson, was he behind the Rapid League and the Tauhui League?
He was, yeah.
Yeah.
Australian. Yeah. Opportunities. That's all I'm going to say. Opportunities.
He did. It's going to love to hear what you have to say on this too, Maia. He's done so much, and there are discourse going around here and there. But I think, anytime, and Justin said this multiple times, there's, if you don't know it, it's going to be scary. And the fact that New Zealand had somebody come in like Justin with a vision, and the way he just propped up both the men's and women's sides has been phenomenal. And understandably, he's ready to step back and spend some time with family over in Australia now. But I think stuff is going to happen. But I think if we looked at the end result, it was it's just amazing what he's done.
Yeah, he's a very innovative and very creative mind, and the things he's done for basketball in New Zealand, has made the men's NBL what it is, but especially creating a chance for women to play basketball at a serious level in New Zealand, and then creating the Rapid League. It's the first of its kind in the world, and then had the deal with Sky where women, get paid some serious money to play basketball in New Zealand. That was, you would have never imagined that 5 years ago, to be honest. So yeah, he's done his duties. Obviously, heading back to Australia now to make sure his grandkids know who he is. But yeah, he's obviously a guy that is just so brave to do what he does. He just doesn't care what kind of anybody says or thinks. And I got it. I owe my whole broadcasting basketball career to him. He gave me my whole Sky start and has developed me along the way. So I wouldn't be where I am without him either. So he's done great things.
I think he's helped a lot of us in some way or another. And there's, for all this, any stuff that's been talked about, I think I'm just going to leave it there. I think we've got to acknowledge that, he's been huge. And at the end, we can't take that away from him. He's done phenomenal stuff. So, I do want to say thank you to him for what he's, for the foundation he's put in place, for sure.
Okay, so guys, as we sort of hit to the back end of the podcast here, first of all the games, we know that the Sunshine Coast game has been sold out. Kerry, do you know how Adelaide's going?
I believe there is a limited amount of tickets left. There is, so they've been promoting that recently. There's a clinic as well. They're going to do, the Boomers and Opals are going to do a clinic on the Sunday leading up to the first game. They're doing things to try and sell out that game. We had a phenomenal NBL season here, where the Adelaide 36ers sold out, I think it was every game at the Adelaide Entertainment Centre. So I would like to think that by game day, it should be sold out.
Great.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
Crazy.
And,
can you tell? I'm so excited that it's here in my hometown.
No, I can tell.
That's so great. Excited. So I was telling Mary, segue. I was telling Mary, I was in Melbourne in 2015, the last time there was a series in Australia. And any other time I've wanted to see the Boomers and Opals, I've had to go interstate. So I'm really excited they're here in Adelaide.
Love that.
Love that
and,
for you.
Maya, how's things going with the game at Hamilton? Do you know?
I'm not 100% sure, but seeing as it's the Tall Ferns' first time playing at home since 2019,
wow,
I would, sure hope that attendance is good. It is a little bit of a struggle that's in Hamilton. It's just not a place where I guess like a lot of people flock to or live in. But I would assume that it would get a pretty good crowd, especially because the Tall Blacks lineup is looking pretty sharp too.
Yeah.
Okay, and will you be doing anything at the game in Hamilton?
Yes, I am lucky enough to. I'll be co-hosting a little bit and on the sidelines as well. So
awesome.
Yeah, I'm pretty lucky to be involved in that way and be really up close to the action. I'm really hoping I get to interview Sandy because that would be like a massive dream come true. If she's listening, she's definitely not listening, but yeah,
I'm sure Paul can help with that.
Well,
please. Please.
Well, actually, no. Sorry. Can we confirm that, Paul?
Well, as far as I know, she's going to be because it's WNBA season right now, and there's also
So she's not.
So Paul Goris will be the head coach for the series. So she's in. I'm really sorry. I'm really sorry, Maia, but I'm sure that Paul will help you some other way.
Maybe one day.
Yeah, so I think this is going to be a great series. I think there's a lot of good stuff that's going to come out of it for both countries. And I think, to be really honest, in terms of, the Tall Ferns, I think this is going to be a great launch point for the Tall Ferns internationally on the international stage to reset, fresh ideas coming in from the coaching staff. I think it's going to be something to really look forward to. And also for the Opals, like I said, it's that development of the pipeline for the next two Olympic cycles is starting now, and also we'll be seeing some of the players from this going into China. So I think there's a lot of really good stuff that's going to come out of this, and it's going to be really exciting to see. Guys, I just want to say thanks so much for joining me on the show on episode 200.
Woo!
And it's great. It's great to have you here, and looking forward to the series. And again, as I said, thanks so much for joining me on the show.
Thanks for bringing us all together.
So we are actually live out to the world at the moment, but that's okay. Apparently people just jump on early. They'll just get to hear us talking.
Great. Welcome.
While we're doing the audio check. Yeah, that's the way it goes.
Hello, world.
Yeah.
Hello, world.
And also, I've got to let Mary know because she's going to do a... Okay, she can hear us. Apparently, it's all good.
Yay.
Great. All right.
Hi, Mary.
Right. What's everybody been...
Hi, Mary.
So, what's everybody been up to? Oh, it's nearly time. Phew, well, there you go. We'll have to do a catch up afterwards then. Make sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so you get our latest pod. And we really appreciate if we could get a like and a review so we can extend the reach to more listeners. And don't forget, follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn.